Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Gago. I'm the founder and CEO at Pando, the performance platform designed to kill traditional performance reviews and increase talent density through continuous performance calibration. This topic is obviously my favorite topic to discuss, so I'm very excited about it. I think figuring this out is the holy grail of performance management and how we've been thinking about it. So how do we get to structured, transparent, more iterative, real-time performance feedback, not just feedback and not just performance reviews, and something that really benefits both individuals as well as the business. We're going to talk about this today, and we're going to talk about how you actually get there and some examples of what all of these fabulous ladies have done. Joining me for this talk, I've got three wonderful leaders who are all at the forefront of this, I would say, performance transformation, a lot of mindset shift in the space, all in different ways. So Colleen is joining us. She's the Chief People Officer at Rev Health, experienced people leader. She's been building people first cultures and navigating rapid growth and organizational change. So she's got a lot to share on that front. Kim is the founder of Code Traveler HR. And she's bringing a very rich perspective on balancing the organizational performance needs as well as individual growth. And then Hebba, the Chief People Officer at Workweek, very outspoken advocate for human-centered, anti-bureaucratic approaches to performance and work. So thank you all for being here. Colleen, Kim, and Hebba, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. So excited for this conversation.
Same, can't wait.
All right, so today we're going to dive into how do we move beyond the traditional sort of rigid review cycle type of approach and get to a more continuous performance culture. And I want to start with the state of the state because I think we've heard a lot from leaders and from employees. There's a lot of pressure on building high performance teams. We've swung from we need to retain and develop talent to we just need to perform and be efficient and all of that. So things have changed. I think leaders and employees both aren't really necessarily seeing the value of performance reviews, at least in some of the typical sense, in that they can take a long time, that they're not really bringing a lot of value. Some are thinking about ditching them altogether. So I want to get each of your sort of hot take, let's say, on performance today. Hebba, let's start with your hot take. How are you feeling about performance management?
Oh, wow. So I think like how I'm feeling versus how companies are feeling could be different. I think about performance reviews, I think for me, I think a lot of people are struggling with them in HR because we've seen them take a lot of time, really not give good feedback. Everyone really struggles with giving good feedback during reviews, and then create this like really intense pressure between employees and managers as they're trying to figure out how to navigate performance or even define it. But I do think more companies than not still want to do them because I think for so long we've anchored to we have to do these to actually understand performance. So I don't know if it's like a hot take or not, but I think most HR people are like, I want to do it differently. And I think a lot of companies are still relying on that crutch of we have to do them to actually understand our talent.
Yeah, in some cases, it's like mandatory from a compliance perspective. If you're SOC 2 compliant, you need to do performance reviews.
Yeah.
And I think also there's a worry or not worry, but there's definitely a risk of not doing it and then not having those performance feedback loops at all. So like how do you find the in between? Kim, what's yours?
Yeah, I actually think that companies do want performance reviews, but they want it to fix all of the problems. It's like how I would really love to run a marathon, but refuse to put on sneakers and go for a training run. It does take time. And I think that's one thing that HR professionals and people ops professionals can do better. Like, how do we make this simple and easy and time manageable, but still impactful? So we can make those informed decisions, whether it's promotions or growth or compensation. Again, maybe not a hot take, but a little bit, yeah.
These are all hot takes. I'm taking them as hot. Colleen.
My hot take is I've seen in the companies I've supported that some touch point is necessary and the lighter weight you can make it, and the more about the conversation that you can focus it, and the relationship between the manager and the employee is really where like that kind of special sauce is created and the trust is reinforced. But you really have to have the conversations along the way in order for to get to that one singular conversation if you're going to have.
What I'm hearing is that companies and people like do want it. People want to know how they're doing, where they're at. Companies obviously want to make sure everybody's on the same page, that we're actually delivering against our broader goals. But there's still a disconnect between going through the motions of the way we've traditionally done it and what the reality of how we all work is and what actually drives those results. And I think that's where the smaller feedback loops come in, and not just about feedback, but feedback in a structured, sort of calibrated way. I guess if we're thinking about, and somebody already commented in the chat about doing quarterly or not spending as much time on this once a year thing, I think that's definitely a trend that I've seen and many organizations are moving away from. My dream is like, you don't even have necessarily quarterly, that it's all like a real-time thing. This is what I dream about every night. Anyway, how do we move?
You're in the right line of work then, Barbara.
I know. How do we move from once a year review? Like, practically speaking, as people leaders, advisors, what are the things that we need to do culturally, supporting managers, the operational shifts? And Colleen, maybe I can start with you.
Yeah, sure.
What are some of those things?
I think it's giving people the authority to make the time to have the conversations and then reinforcing it. I sit in front of my organization and remind them of the functions of our system and allowing employees to really own the process, to say, if you deserve to know where you stand, you deserve to know how you're doing and to ask for it. And it's a hard muscle to like really train, talking about putting sneakers on and trying and going for the training run, because people then default to, oh, I'm going to have a performance review. But I'm really constantly talking to folks about when you have those, your one-on-ones, setting aside time to have the conversation and focusing on the real-time feedback, just repetition, focus, and giving them the tool, like the software tool to use as they need it. And some employees need it in one way and others need it in another. And to really allow people to choose their own adventure in that way is what I'm doing to shift to a continuous model.
Yeah, I just spoke with Russ Laraway. So he wrote a book, When They Win, You Win. He was also partnering with Kim for Radical Candor. And he was talking about how like manager behaviors need to be like constantly assessed. So I think also this idea of assessment, like we talk about it in the form of reviews with a rating, but the thing that I found really interesting about what he was talking about is that it's like you're constantly assessing against these behaviors, and sometimes you're going to be higher in them, sometimes you might be lower, and then you're also going to get training and direct support around the areas that you're lacking, and that you're normalizing those assessments in the way that it's not a review and it's not going to be tied to compensation and you're not going to get fired because of it. Obviously, if you don't change your behavior and you don't get better or you refuse to, then that's another story. And that is something that would need to be addressed. But I think that's also really interesting, kind of thinking about how are you tracking against behaviors and measuring those and getting feedback, both employees and managers. Kim, what do you think?
Yeah, similarly, I think we tend to think about reviews as as the only feedback opportunity. But really, if we want to shift to this continual mindset, it's separating feedback and coaching. Like I love a good analogy. I could go to the gym and meet with a personal trainer once every 6 months and get zero benefit, some benefit. Or I could go a couple times a week and get those micro adjustments to my form, to how I'm lifting, to what I'm doing. And I think when we make this conscious shift to a continuous model, we start separating feedback from evaluations.
Yeah.
And we start dedicating time to those conversations. It takes time to check in with somebody. It takes replacing a one-on-one, or I think Hebba's going to say some great stuff, so I don't want to step on toes, but really thinking about when can we create and dedicate time and space for feedback and coaching? And then how often are we moving to a stricter evaluation model where we're making decisions, whether it be performance or promotions?
Yeah. Heba, is she reading your mind? Are you sending mind waves to her?
It was always reading my mind. Honestly, we just lock eyes from across the room and both of us are like, oh, okay, we know what's happening here. No, those are all really good points. I think the gym training metaphor is honestly perfect. For a lot of archaic like performance management structures, it really views performance as like a moment in time. You're like, oh, at the beginning of the year, I'm a top performer. At the end of the year, I'm like a medium performer. And really what we should all see is like performance is like this. It's changing every day over day. And when you really anchor to like only doing it twice a year, you lose the fact that like we as humans change day over day. And then you're not getting that like good feedback you want to actually be better in every review. So I think when we're thinking about how do you turn it into something continuous, it's like even starting with the fact that like performance changes day over day. The only time you're going to be assessed is not going to be twice a year. Because obviously we're just going to be on our best behavior because everyone has recency bias. So like
Right.
I've been in organizations where like 3 weeks before a review, everybody starts like being on their P's and Q's. They're on like their best behavior. And I'm like, what's going on? Everyone's so nice right now. And I remember our reviews are coming up. Obviously, people know about recency bias, so they're only going to behave like super great near these reviews. And so when you think about that and you really destigmatize like performance is not a one-time thing, it's continuous day over day, and you actually approach the conversation that way, I think you can actually get better results with your employees and your managers.
And when you're doing continuous feedback, and God forbid documenting it, please document it. You're going to combat some of that recency bias just by nature of this new workflow.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the seeing the performance on kind of this continuum, and some people are going to have a steeper curve, some people will have a more flat curve depending on how senior you are in the organization. If you're in a new role, your performance might totally nosedive before it gets better because maybe it's the first time you're taking on a manager role, for example, and that should be okay. So I think, Kim, to your point, doing it more frequently is addressing that recency bias. And also, Heba, what you're talking about is just like a very inauthentic process. Like people are just behaving a certain way because, and obviously this happens everywhere, but it's like they're behaving a certain way because those things are happening instead of just having it baked in. So that is the question. So continuous feedback this all sounds great. Yeah, give feedback all the time. I like the tennis coach analogy too, because we watch a lot of tennis. So it's like after every match, you're getting the feedback, not at the end of the season or whatever. Similar to the gym metaphor. Kim, you're really good at metaphors, by the way.
Thank you. Greatest compliment I've ever received.
So it sounds great, but it requires structure, it requires consistency. How do you make it fair? I guess, what are the practical tools here? What can we do to get started? Rituals, frameworks, where do you start? Like performance calibration is, and reviews are on one end, feedback is on another end. Like what's the starting point? Heba, why don't you jump in?
You can't, when leaders come to me and they're like, we want to do reviews, I'm always like, why? That's always my first question. Like, why do you want to do a review? I just want our employees to get feedback. And I'm like, that you should just give your employees feedback. So when I got to Work Week almost 3 years ago, I remember talking to the co-founders and I was like, I really do not believe in just like doing reviews to do reviews. We need to like, build the habit of actually giving feedback first. So by the time they get to those reviews, they can actually give good feedback. So we started doing Feedback Fridays, and it's like simple structure. 3 questions for the employee. It's actually mostly upward feedback. 3 questions for the manager, that's downward. And we gave them a Google Doc because we have no systems. We're like, here's a Google Doc. We just want you to take notes and actually give each other feedback. And I told everybody it's mandatory you meet every 2 weeks. And both the co-founders were like, okay, we're on board. So we like mandatory did it for everyone. And I just said, all I want you to do is just give feedback. That's all I want you all to try. And if you're struggling with how to do it, we're going to practice how to do it. So we did a lot of training sessions on like how to give feedback. They can come to me and we can like workshop feedback together. And they're just in the habit of giving feedback to one another. And we did that for a full year before the employees were like, hey, can we get reviews? Like the employees came to us and they were like, Feedback Friday is like so cool. Can we actually get reviews? And I was like, why do you all want reviews? And they're like, yeah, the feedback's really great, but like, we want to know where we stand. Like we want a rating. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, I've like never had employees be like, I want reviews, give them to me. But our employees wanted them. And they asked several times over like many open forums, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? And we finally did it last year. And it has similar questions to our Feedback Fridays, but then there's also like a scale and the opportunity to actually give like confidential feedback about their manager that doesn't go to their manager. So we started the habit of like, you have to practice. We did that for a full year before we even did reviews. And then we basically made it mandatory because if you're given the option, do you want to give feedback? How many of us would be like, yeah, I think all 4 of us would give feedback, to be clear. But like the average manager is, no, I'm really busy. I don't have time for this. So I think by us making it mandatory, it got them in the habit. And now we hear feedback regularly from our employees that the Feedback Fridays were one of the best things we've ever done. It
Yeah.
routinely gets like praise because people are finally getting feedback.
Yeah, we also do Feedback Fridays. And I think the other thing that I really advocate for is like competency-based feedback, because those can also have ratings. And then you're merging this like need for understanding where you stand with the feedback. So it's anchoring in a very concrete way. Like, this is the feedback, and what does that actually translate to for where you're at? So I really like that. And I like that you're building the habit, which is the important thing, and also the psychological safety around the cultural aspect of we're going to be performance driven and we're going to focus on feedback. And that's a really good base foundation layer. And I am not surprised that they asked for the reviews, because then it's, yeah, it makes sense. I'm getting feedback. This is great. And have I leveled up, or am I getting closer to level up, or where am I at? What's my trajectory? That's a really great example, and also a super lightweight way to get going, because Feedback Fridays can be, I think, having a structure and also that cadence. Colleen, how about you? What are some of the ways?
I've tried to meet people where they were in this, where I am today at Rev Health. There was a strong 360 feedback process that accompanied the annual process. And so we've really encouraged people to use the feedback function in Pando, and I see it happening all the time. After there's a deliverable, people are asking for feedback and they're giving it to each other. People ask me for feedback, I've asked for feedback. And so trying to really just model it by also asking for it myself is a big way. Lead by example, if leaders go first type of thing. If I'm asking for feedback, it's giving, I think, the authority again for people to take the ownership of, oh, I can ask for feedback too.
I think one thing that has helped me personally is remembering to ask for feedback before the thing, depending on what it is. So if I'm doing an all hands or some kind of presentation or a webinar or whatever, like reminding people to ask each other for feedback before the thing, so that the people who are giving the feedback are also more, oh, I've been asked to do this. I'm going to think about it and pay attention to it as it's happening as well, instead of after the fact. Then it's, oh, what was it? But I think it's a great example to set in terms of leading by example. Kim, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I'm
Practical?
going to go a little off the rails and say some of the frameworks I really like using are actually things like career leveling and goaling frameworks, particularly things that include an individual's goals, whether it be personal or professional. I think feedback is great, but if you don't know what I want and what I'm aiming towards, that feedback gift is going to be more of a fruitcake and less of something delightful that I actually wanted. So take some time to, when you are diving into building this beautiful feedback muscle that will help reviews and help consistent feedback, take some time to map out, here's what you should be giving feedback on. Here's what we expect from people leaders, from staff, engineers, from whatever, just so folks know how to best deliver their thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
Okay. I do see in the chat someone says fruitcake. My mom loves fruitcake. I know that's not the best, but you get it. Come on, you get it.
We get it, for sure. We had a conversation happening earlier today around goals, and one of the biggest challenges that people in general face at organizations is just lack of alignment or knowing what they even are supposed to work on. So I think managers struggle with that. There's a lot of change, there's a lot of shifting in strategies. And so I think having at least those frameworks, like you mentioned, having clarity around levels, which also came up in my conversation with Russ, that like an engineering manager and a marketing manager or director or whatever, we should have the same expectations for them in that level at the org, regardless of what their pay is or what the function is, because it's a performance standard that we all have defined and agree to. And then, as you said, making that transparent is the way that we're anchoring. So I think going back to the Hebba's team example where the feedback was happening and then they're like, okay, what does that mean? That's where the framework comes in to connect the dots between, yes, this feedback is happening and this is where it's anchored and how you're progressing or what the impact looks like. So that's a great point. So then what does measurement look like? So we talked about looking at, if we're thinking about performance as a continuum, and this is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and coming from the sales and marketing side, we spent a lot of time looking at every stage of the funnel and thinking about how do you get more qualified leads in the funnel, and then how do you move them through the funnel faster? And I think from a performance perspective, we're looking at this in a similar way, which is what is the growth rate of individuals as it relates to impact and performance within the business? That's going to be up sometime, that's going to be down sometimes, but hopefully it's like on a general trend up and to the right. So what does this look like and how do we do it? So if we're not necessarily anchoring in these annual sort of review cycles or goals, which they may still be a part of this broader kind of continuum, how do we measure that impact over time without hopefully looking at bell curves? I want as many people as at my company performing their best, not, oh, here's the top 10%. So what do we do from a measurement perspective? And Colleen, maybe we can start with you in terms of balancing that growth and sort of outcome and measurement.
Yeah, I think we still have the main touch points in the year. We still have the feedback from managers. We do have a kind of a rating that we record, but we don't focus on that as like the definition of the employee. It's one factor. And so we try to look at the person as a whole and all of the things that they've done throughout the year and what they're planning on doing in the future. Someone posted in the chat, yeah, performance reviews are past focused. We're right now very much about our future growth. And so we're trying to give people the tools and the encouragement to go get that future thing. And so I haven't come up with a measurement for the future, but we're trying to get as many touch points throughout the year so that we can make informed decisions about promotions and development and coaching along the way. And so we encourage, again, our employees to really take the ownership of their growth. And we still are leaning on the recording of the measurements of reviews within the cycles, but not at just an annual process. It is about really getting people talking throughout the year.
Yeah, and have multiple touch points and a more holistic view of what's happened.
Yeah, like you said, it's a continuum. It's what the people have done in the past, but also what you want them to do in the future. And people showing up for the training that they're provided and being part of conversations and being active in the things that are going to make themselves better and also for the organization, all of that kind of comes into play, I believe.
Yeah. Kim, I know you have a good perspective here because a lot of what we deal with employees also is, I want to grow, I want to grow, I want to get to the next level. What do I need to do? There's that bottom up pull from employees around their own career development. And I think that's a big part of, we're trying to tie these two things together, but what's your sort of perspective on the measurement piece?
Yeah, so as a data-informed leader, I don't mind some sort of metric that we can put in place. And what I've really been experimenting with the last couple of years is this idea of a sentiment score. So something at the end of a formalized conversation where everyone's answering the same questions and they're outcomes and impact are being compared to the expectations of their level. I do like a sentiment score that kind of caps everything off. And to your point about bell curves, I think most people should be nailing it. They should be in the right role at the right time, just crushing their job. So for me, that sentiment score on my back end, I can check and make sure, ooh, is everyone in the right role at the right time? Whereas the employee isn't hearing, you're a 3, you've met expectations. Like, what a horrific way to end a review conversation. But rather, like, to Hebba's point, like making these more human forward while still retaining some bit of data informity when we go to make whatever decisions are getting made from this. So I think it just depends on, and then that data, that sentiment score helps enable the fairness. It helps enable the equity because then I can at least step back and say, what is it like to be a gay human here? What is it like to be a Black human here? What is it like to be a woman here? You know, those questions and that data is important more for the organization and less for the individual.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And how about you? Are you all doing like a rating at the end? Do you have goals, inputs? What's the kind of picture look like?
We do, but something that we do, I think that has contributed to us having really good reviews is we're always talking about the impact that people are making to our organization. So even in our reviews, our first question is, what are the 2 most significant achievements you made during this half of the year? Because we do them twice a year. And how did these achievements create value for the organization? So we're always talking about people's impact and value. And I have found that when we framed the question that way, that employees were like actually able to give more honest feedback about themselves and the achievements they made, but also that they're always connecting the work they're doing to the overall impact to the business. And we ask managers to talk about this with them regularly. And so we just reinforce it in the review with that question. And I think that has led to a lot of our employees understanding, oh, we don't have the problem where everyone wants a promotion. Like we don't have people who are like, I think I'm the best thing since sliced bread. Like I told all of our employees, we have a 5-point scale. Really at the 5, you've created a whole new business line for us. That's going to revolutionize our business. Most of us are 3s and 4s, and that's okay. And I also told them, like, I give myself a 3 every quarter. Every review, I'm just like, I meet expectations. I'm doing the basics of this job. I'm not going above and beyond, and I'm doing okay. And so I think when you like have those conversations quite transparently with your org, it actually becomes like easier for people to assess the impact they're making, like to the organization easily. The other thing we do, and this is outside of our reviews, is once a year we review every single job description that we have assigned to a person. And we ask the managers to identify, are they still doing what's in this job description or are they doing something else? And so we've committed to doing this. We're a smaller org, so it's pretty easy. But basically the manager reviews the JD, makes sure that the employee is like either doing this job, adds to it. We refresh the JD and actually assign it back to the employee and tell the employee, like, we wrote you a new JD to make sure it's reflective of the work you're doing. Because I think the problem with reviews that we have seen in the past is managers start assessing based on what the employee is doing, not what their actual job is sometimes. So I've tried to solve that by like once a year doing this review of every JD across the organization. And the first time we did this, we like learned so much. There were like 5 people that were doing a completely different job. And I was like, oh, we hired them to do this one thing. How are you assessing them in their review if they're actually doing this entirely other job? And it really helped conversations with managers. Like I put the onus on the manager to say, you have to review line item by line item what's in this JD, and you need to know exactly what they're doing because that is how you are assessing their performance.
Yeah.
We're probably going to do that like once a year for the foreseeable future. And our like check-ins happen, our reviews, we call them check-ins, happen twice a year. And they're really driven around like, how are you creating value for the organization? Is like our first question. And our second question is, what are you focused on creating value for in the next set of time?
Yeah.
And I think that has been good. I think it's been good.
Yeah. I think we do like competency-based performance questions for that exact reason. So it's like, this is the expectation within the role. And like most people are going to be delivering against that expectation, but it gives more space for you could actually be over delivering. You could be delivering at the next level in these 3 dimensions.
Mhm.
These 3 dimensions, you're just doing exactly what you should be. Maybe in some other dimension, you're actually not delivering at your level. You're
Yeah.
delivering at the level below. So it also creates what you're doing, which is, are the manager and employee aligned around what the actual expectations are? And is that clear?
Yeah.
And then it also gives a little bit more, what I would say, context or flexibility to the approach, in that like everyone has the things that they'll be good at and won't be good at, but it won't mean that they're like only a 3 or only a 5 or whatever. You know what I mean?
I like that too, because it removes the subjectivity from reviews. Like a
Yeah,
lot of times I'm like, God, I hope my manager's like in a good mood and likes me this week because I'm going to get a better review. And so I
right.
think when you have like competency-based frameworks, you really anchor to what is this skill that we're assessing this person, and less on how do I feel about them today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and them as a whole, and rather it's, okay, here's all the things.
Yeah.
Maybe they're good at some things and they need to work on others, and it's not like a single rating. That's what I like about competency based, at least.
We do that as well. And we actually have been refreshing our rubric to make sure that what we're measuring each level in each department, that's been refreshed, because as the business needs change and the macro industry needs change, we're staying on top of the competencies, because we have competency-based hiring, and we're also then developing folks based on the competencies for the level, and then helping them understand, like, okay, you want to get to this level on this team, or you want to go here. This is the focus. These are the competencies that you need to hone. You're really good at these 3 things. This thing needs to be adjusted so that you can get yourself ready for it. So that's been really good for us getting this year started, was that refresh of our.
Yeah, like what Kim brought up earlier with levels, even. I think competencies is step 2 and levels is step 1, but we work with a lot of companies who are at a different point in their evolution. They've reset the organization, they have a new focus, maybe they've gone through a reorg, and now levels look different. And it's okay. Similar, Hebba, to what you're doing about job descriptions, this is what the new level X is, or maybe that's associated with a title, maybe it isn't, but it's like level 6. Now we expect this, and that's okay to do, and that's fair. It's just a matter of making sure people get it before you assess them against those criteria, of course.
Such a good point. I feel like when you're developing levels, competencies, attributes, frameworks, if you are going to review people against them, they should have some time to adjust. And you can even say, hey, we're thinking of slotting you in here, or we're thinking this aligns with this, but we're giving 4 months, 6 months for you
Exactly.
to understand the competencies before being
Yeah.
evaluated against them.
We found that like employees actually will be a bit more modest. Like most of the time, employees are like, I'm great, if you don't give them a framework to benchmark themselves again. And when you do, it's, oh, they can be a little bit more realistic about what their actual strengths are and where they have to grow. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes. I want to look forward, and for many organizations who are on this sort of journey and transformation, what are the things that we should be prioritizing? Maybe like each of us can share, what is one thing to commit to or to focus on to help drive this transformation internally? And Kim, let's start with you.
Oh man, I was hoping to steal somebody else's. I would say, looking forward, think about how your review programs and feedback programs actually fit within the organization. So they're not just about the individual who's experiencing the performance management, but rather like, how is this program impacting your organization? How is it impacting your revenue? How is it impacting your skills libraries? But really start connecting your performance management to your organizational health.
Great. Colleen, how about you?
I think just reinforcing that time is needed. People have to dedicate, managers and employees need to dedicate the time to each other to sit and have the conversations, build the trust, and give the real-time feedback, whether it's upward, downward, cross department. The time is necessary, because busyness cannot be an excuse for not giving the timely feedback. It has to happen in order for all of us to get better.
Hebba, how about you?
Those were all so good. Dang it. Dang it. I was like, how do I come up with something so good too? Okay, how do I do it? I just read the Gallup Global State of Engagement report. I can't stop thinking about it, which clearly tells you how obsessed I am with my job. I can't stop thinking about it because like managers had the like biggest drop in engagement. And I frequently look at that group, like they have such an impact. They have the biggest impact on an employee's day to day, even their mental health. There was this whole article about how your manager has a bigger impact on your mental health than your partner, the person you're with every freaking day. And so when I'm looking at performance and how do you prepare companies for the future, I'm looking at this one group that's genuinely struggling. And we ask so much of managers. And so I think like my tip here would be figure out how to support that group, what they need to make it easier to have really good performance-based conversations. Because I think they are genuinely struggling and it does not come naturally to somebody to give good feedback. It does not come naturally for us to assess someone's performance. They need to learn and get those reps in the gym, but also they're doing like 50 other jobs. So if I were to look anywhere at your org where you could have the biggest single impact on performance, I would look at those managers and think, how do I support them? How do I get them to do these things?
I think it's a great point, and I think you mentioned them doing a bunch of other jobs as well. And I think that one of the things that we've seen is that organizations moving more towards having a manager rubric. So basically like your role, the things that you need to be good at are like employee coaching, career development, org design, like manager stuff. And I think part of it comes back to as well having a very clear distinction between what a manager role is and what an IC role is, and not overvaluing a manager role through how you compensate managers, because I think that's why people lean into that role as well. But they are super critical to the business and they have so much impact and influence. And I 100% agree that this is definitely an area that we need to focus. Okay, so we've got great tips on what to do to move forward. I'm super excited. Hopefully everyone else is inspired to move away from the typical performance review and get to a more continuous approach. Thank you everyone for joining. Hebba, Colleen, and Kim, really enjoyed the conversation. Really appreciate your time. Very excited to continue this discussion in other places. See you soon. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.